So Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree has just recently released, and it's doing pretty well. It's got a mixed review on Steam because for some reason people can't understand that you need to actually play and adapt your build to the DLC because it's going to be harder than the base game. I know, using an actual cognitive thought to actually make a competent build to fight a certain boss that you're struggling with, or change up your already existing build and playstyle, or just learn the moveset of the boss may be too hard for some of these people. So it's led to a lot of people saying the DLC is too hard, let's give it a negative review, but there are some actual criticisms towards the DLC that I've heard from other people, mainly performance. The only thing I've had is slight stutters and one blue screen, which was pretty interesting when I was exploring when that happened. But for the most part, I was able to complete the DLC and just speedrun through most of the Remembrance bosses and most of the side content that I found somewhat appealing within about 6 hours, maybe, I think? I didn't really count the time. But I wouldn't really say that this DLC was necessarily hard. It did have a bit of challenge here and there, but it really depends if you're mentally challenged or not, and if you know how to actually play Souls games, it's going to be a pretty good time regardless. All I can advise those who are struggling with the DLC: grab the fingerprint shield, grab a spear, you've now made the DLC 10 times easier than it already was. And if that doesn't work out for you, I guess you're just gonna get filtered, if you don't actually put the time in. But all I have to say to you is that don't give up, don't go hollow on us, we need more boys on the field. We need more people doing PvP, we need you boys out there. Don't give up on me yet, I have faith in you. But anyway, we're going to talk about someone I have no faith in, which is Harmon Smith. Because as soon as the DLC came out, he called it a flop. That's right, guys. One of the most anticipated things this year is somehow a flop. Was this really the first 5 seconds of your video? Was it really necessary to show this? Is this like your haha, I was right about Elden Ring, it's a flop, clearly? Also, I'm very sorry for downloading this video in the lowest quality. YouTube downloaders aren't working right now properly, and they're only later download in the lowest quality, but I guess we can work with that, as I'm sure you don't want to see Harmon in 4K.
Even I couldn't have possibly predicted that Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, could have flopped as badly as it did.
So I took this screenshot a couple hours after launch, and I don't know about you, that doesn't seem like a flop, and later that night I think it hit around, 525,000, it nearly hit its peak player count. I don't know about you, Harmon, that absolutely seems like a flop in your eyes, but to everyone else that's an absolute W. And also, here's what it is right now, by the way, I just thought I'd share that as well to see that it's still keeping player retention for some time.
People are doing damage control right now. They're doing the typical FromSoft thing where they're trying to say they're like, well, actually, people just got filtered by the difficulty. Never.
They literally did. They got filtered by the difficulty because, as an example of Asmongold, he went in with his pre-existing build, absolutely sucked ass, was about to quit the game, then found another build that made the game absolutely easy. For some reason, a lot of these people that are giving negative reviews don't seem to understand that you can change your build and improve upon it by making bosses easier if you just use the right equipment. It's so easy to make these DLCs easier for you if you just use your brain. A lot of people seem to just refuse doing that and are like, no, I'm not going to switch my build at all. And that's why Elden Ring's DLC has a bunch of negative reviews. And of course, I need to say this again, it's not all because of the gameplay and some of the bosses, it's just because also performance issues are a thing, and there are a couple issues. I do believe some hitboxes are a bit interesting. But for the most part, a lot of these negative reviews are just people sitting there coping and seething that they got filtered by the DLC, with very little actually good criticism towards the DLC itself.
Fine, this is a DLC campaign that requires specific things to be done in the base game to get through, right? Never mind that people know how to play the game, that it's been out forever, that it's old as dirt, that this is supposed to be the biggest DLC campaign of the year. People were calling this Game of the Year worthy.
First of all, it's old as dirt, it's only been out for 2 years and it feels like yesterday it just came out. Second of all, I do hope it wins Game of the Year, or Most Anticipated Thing of the Year, whatever that award is. Do you remember when Elden Ring won Game of the Year? That shit was insane, so many people got salty over that, I would love to do that, that had a lot of salt behind it. Let's do that again.
Right? Ever since this thing was announced. Like, I remember when people were trying to tell you that Shadows of the Erdtree would outsell Tears of the Kingdom, right?
I would like you to point out the individual that said that, so I can shake their hand, because in most regards, I would say that they're correct. You gotta remember that Elden Ring just recently sold over 20 million or 25 million copies, so it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for accounting for almost everyone that likes the base game would love to pick up a DLC and go again.
In 2023, and that would win Game of the Year over Baldur's Gate 3. Like, it was like some of the most insane, elaborate cope I've ever seen in my life. Like, it was absurd.
You're telling me that all this is a cope when you're the same guy that was coping over the fact that Elden Ring was Game of the Year. I don't know about you, mate, but I'm gonna say it here, but I think you were the one that was truly coping. I think most people are happy with Elden Ring winning, besides those people that were saying Spider-Man 2 would win. May those people rest in peace for that miserable game.
How hardcore fanboys were in pretending that this game was going to be an industry-defining masterpiece. And now,
I really wish you would do some basic editing just to cut out the parts where you say nothing. It would save you like 5 to 10 seconds, but then again, I don't think you're really going to do that, as I'm sure you want to extend the video as long as possible to put as many mid-roll ads in it. Who really knows? You've got your own ambitions, Harmon. But to say that Elden Ring was not industry-defining, I do believe is genuinely wrong, because if you look at Elden Ring, it sold around, what is it, just now, 25 million copies? Not many games can do that, and I do genuinely believe that as we go on into the future, you're going to see a lot more Western studios try to copy and replicate Elden Ring's success in some regard. And you need to keep in mind, with those 25 million copies, pretty much everyone's heard about Elden Ring. People that don't even play games know what Elden Ring is for the most part. It's a very popular game, and even though it may not be the most popular right now, even though the DLC just came out, during that launch period, everyone was pretty much talking about it. Even developers trying to shit on the game for being too hard and somehow complicated and not having all this random stuff on the UI to tell you what you need to go and map markers. I swear, there are just certain people that shouldn't be developing games that have that job. Just fire most of them. Most of them don't deserve to have that job. They all suck at making games anyway. We might as well just get competent people in to make the games.
and now that the game is out, now that it's been forgotten, now that it's like not taking off, now that it's not becoming popular, now that it has mixed reviews on Steam.
Yes, that's right, guys. Elden Ring with nearly 400,000 players at the time of taking that screenshot must mean dead. I don't know about you guys, but that seems like a reasonably sound bit of logic right there. May Lord have mercy on our soul that this man can vote.
It couldn't be more clear that not only was I right about the DLC, about how it wasn't going to save the game, how it wasn't going to lead to like some new resurgence of popularity, how it was going to like just kind of flounder.
Harmon, there is new interest in the game because of the DLC. Pretty much everyone and their cat is talking about the DLC. I don't know about you, you may avoid that, but from everything I've seen, everyone has renewed interest in Elden Ring and its DLC. Do I need to show you this image again?
Players would like blast through it in a weekend and then just kind of forget about it. It would not only was I right, I was more right than anyone possibly could have predicted, because this game is, I think people are really underestimating just how poorly received this game actually is.
I don't know what it is, but I think Harmon is genuinely as addictive when it comes to listening to him, and makes you want to suffer just as much as that addiction as For Honor. For Honor makes me say things that I will never regret saying, because that game truly makes me hate myself and the people that play it. But this, it's worse than War Thunder. I don't know what it is and how you do it, but I don't get how you can look at something and say it's irrelevant, dead, or whatever else to make it look worse. And then you go look at YouTube and everyone's talking about the DLC, whether or not it's positive or negative. And then you can look at the player counts on Steam, and probably we're not going to look at console because there's no way that we can really guess that. But if it's around Steam, I can probably presume that there's more people playing on both console and Steam, so you get where I'm going. There's going to be a lot of people. But I don't get how you can look at all that and just say the game is dead. I was right. Everything is failing. Nintendo is succeeding. I swear at this point, I should just go back to making For Honor content. That shit would be less brain rot than this.
Right now, people are like doing damage control for it and like bending over backwards to justify like everything they've done here with like the rehashed content and the reused movesets and just some of the plot elements, right?
Oh, it's okay when Nintendo gets to release a game that reuses all of the fucking map from the previous game. Oh, but when From Software does something similar or reuses assets for their games, oh, that's illegal. They shouldn't do that. They're lazy.
But I do think it's safe to say that like now that we we have all of our questions answered. Now that we've gotten the DLC, now that we have gotten all the content in Elden Ring, yeah, it's safe to say that Elden Ring did not match up to 2017's Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, let alone the sequels, right?
I could just end the video here, and end my suffering by not watching this video anymore. But I would like this video just to be a little bit longer. But I'm gonna say this, Harmon, I've never played the games, but I'm a Souls elitist. I do believe Souls games are better no matter what.
Elden Ring was a complete failure. In spite of all the shilling campaigns, in spite of in spite of the YouTubers, in spite of game journals, Elden Ring was a failure. And
Poor little Miyazaki's drinking the bottom of a bottle at this point from how unsuccessful Elden Ring was. I don't blame him, honestly. 25 million people ain't enough.
this really needs to be established going forward as to just what happened here, right? You know, this was a game that was propped up artificially by a corrupt game journos trying to sell you on the idea that PlayStation and Xbox have games that like Nintendo Switch does not have.
I don't know if this was like some CIA psyop, but have you seen any of the journalists covering this game? None of them could even complete the game, let alone do many of the side bosses. That's why they were bitching about going into the DLC to kill some random side boss to start it.
Right. They were trying to convince you that like FromSlop is some like top tier game developer when in reality they aren't anything noteworthy in any way, shape, or form, right? Like they were trying to tell you that like, Elden Ring was Game of the Year 2022, Armored Core 6 was Game of the Year 2023, and Shadows of the Erdtree would be Game of the Year 2024. It was insane, right? It was completely out of touch with the reality. Let's just ignore all the better developers out there. Let's just ignore all the better games on Nintendo platforms. Let's just ignore the fact that Elden Ring specifically ignored the Nintendo Switch, right? They did not release on Nintendo Switch because they knew, right, that if you players were able to compare Elden Ring and Zelda side by side, it would be exceedingly obvious that Elden Ring is inferior to Zelda in every way, shape, and form. Like, you know, like just like The Witcher and Dragon Age before it.
The only thing I'm taking away from that very long clip is that it failed because it wasn't on Nintendo, you know? Yep, a very underpowered piece of hardware. Maybe the Nintendo Switch could run a very lesser version of the game. I mean, the Steam Deck can barely run it, but who knows? You could maybe make it work. You know, I'm just gonna leave it here. There's just no point trying to use actual logic to finish this video, so I'm just gonna end it. Hope you will enjoy the video. Help me reach 2,000. See you in the next video. Have a great day.